Hello, this video is about a mistake that almost everyone still makes or thinks that he or she is doing it right when running Facebook ads. This video is one of the most important on this channel. Whatever happens, watch the entire video because there is one important thing that many people still make mistakes on and don't understand and then wonder why the ads don't run well. So let's start right away with what exactly I mean by that. To do this, we need to open the Facebook Ads Manager and simply click on Create in the top left as usual to create a campaign, which we will do quickly. I'm going to skip this part where you go through it step by step because I want to get straight to the point where the mistake is made. In this case, I'll skip all of that and select a sales campaign here, which we'll just use as an example. Then I'll click on Next and then select Manual Campaign here, which we'll do quickly. Here I click on Next again, which is what I'm doing here so that we end up in the campaign area. Of course, you can label everything here, but in this case, that is not the topic of the video, and accordingly, we will skip it. And I will go directly to the ad group level, which is the point that many people get wrong. Here we first have to do the following. We first have to set it to maximize number of conversions. That is also a small trap of Facebook. Even if I selected a conversions campaign or a sales campaign at the very beginning when I selected the campaign goal, Facebook has indirectly turned this into a traffic campaign with this default setting. Of course, we don't want that. We want to tell Facebook, hey Facebook, we want to generate purchases or leads. So we choose the first one here so that we also generate purchases. Then the setting that I will now show will be shown directly. The reason why Facebook has preset this here is that it will be a traffic campaign, because traffic campaigns are better for Facebook because people don't have to buy or register directly, they just see. So it's an advantage for Facebook, not for you. Here, I then click on more options, and now it's about this part, which many people don't understand or often do wrong. What is attribution anyway? Attribution is important. You probably know it from yourself or from your everyday life. Of course, there are also cases where for example, you bought a product immediately after seeing the ad for the first time. However, this is rarely the case. For most people, they first have to build up trust. This means that they have to see 3, 4, 5 advertisements before they can, for example, to buy the product that they have just seen. This is simply because, in addition to trust, the following reasons can also be the case. E.g., a large proportion of people are, for example, at work, playing sports, on the train, or are perhaps even waiting for their paycheck to buy the product. Accordingly, most people do not buy immediately and need a few more contact points. A normal customer journey, i.e. the path from, for example, advertisings for a customer, that making a purchase. That would be a customer journey. It is usually structured as follows. I have prepared a small graphic so that you can see, for example, a Facebook ad here and then maybe an Instagram ad, because they don't just use one app, but also several apps. That they might then see a Facebook ad, perhaps sign up for a newsletter, and then Google the brand, for example, and then buy it. This route is called, for example, an attribution. This is, of course, simplified. There are also variants where, for example, people who see a Facebook ad may ask friends or family or something similar whether they have had any experience with it, for example. The product, or what many people also like to do, is simply look for reviews on the internet. That means, for example, if you still have a Google search, a point on a rating portal and the like, but in principle, if you can summarize it, attribution simply means that you simply have several contact points until the purchase. The case that I just mentioned, where people e.g. see a Facebook ad here and then buy it immediately, for example like this, in this case it would look like this, which is rather rare. Of course, this case can happen from time to time, but it is rare. That's why I'm just going to do it back, and that would be an attribution in a nutshell. Then let's go back to the Facebook Ads Manager, which we'll do briefly. So what exactly is meta attribution and the connection with the meta algorithm? The meta algorithm is extremely smart, despite all the tracking issues you probably already know about, e.g. with iOS 14, iOS 17 and similar. But Facebook doesn't just live from off-page conversions, but also from on-page conversions. On-page conversions, for example, are also simply all sources, such as here Instagram account, or if the person, e.g. likes an ad, interacts, shares it. And off-page conversions, that would be everything outside the platform, so to speak. That means, for example, you have contact here. With the website, you put something in the shopping cart and so on. Facebook has a bit more problems with that. But Facebook, for example, has all the in-app data is what it's called. And Facebook, for example, can work very, very well with that. Exactly, the algorithm is as smart as all the data, which means that based on all these actions, interactions, who buys something, who liked it, this allows the Facebook algorithm to optimize itself so that it knows exactly which people are buying, for example. Once click attribution would then be e.g. if a potential customer clicks on your ad today, for example on Instagram, and only buys after 3 days, then you would, for example, if you set it to 7 days here, Facebook would record that, Facebook would assign it to the campaign, and Facebook would then use that in the system, for example, to optimize itself or the next ad displays. However, if we were to set this to 1 day, then Facebook would not know that, because if the person clicked today and bought after 3 days and we set it to 1 day, for example, then it is outside of the 1 day time frame that we had in the example. That means, in short, this click attribution, that simply means that we give Facebook a time window when they can collect data, for example. That is a maximum time window. And then there is the second option. That simply means engaged view. I can't set that in this case, as you can see here, but that's not important because that's, let's say, a very, very small fraction of Facebook without EG that is applied here. Much more important is the view or view attribution. The view attribution is now only possible for a maximum of 1 day, but that also means only here. So logically, it is exactly the same as with click attribution. For example, Facebook can say, hey, I'll give you a time window of 1 day maximum where you can collect all the events and then assign them to the campaigns. Or you can, for example, say, hey, you're not allowed to assign anything here. And the difference between view and click attribution is simply that, as the name click suggests, the person must, e.g., clicked on the advertisement. And view attribution simply means that the person didn't click on it, but just saw it. Because when you scroll through the Facebook feed, the Instagram feed, or other platforms, there are many more. You see numerous Facebook ads, but you don't click on a Facebook ad every time, but rather much less often when there is interest, but you see the Facebook ad and then maybe Google this ad later when you have a few minutes of peace and time. And here you can say to Facebook, hey, Facebook, even if the person didn't click on it, I still want it to be measured because this person saw the ad. And you can do that, for example. Set it here once. Accordingly, my recommendation would be that you set it here once to 1 day and also set it up here to 7 days, which we will do briefly here. You're probably wondering why. It's simple. We just want to collect as many conversions as possible. This means that Facebook should take as much data as possible so that we can optimize much faster. Because there were no tracking problems in the past, Facebook also offered this variant with a day because without these tracking issues, Facebook had enough data anyway. There are now many blocks, which means that this 1 day is no longer recommended because then Facebook receives almost no data at all. That is the problem here, so to speak. If, for example, you buy more expensive products, some of which cost tens of thousands of euros, then it can, for example, it could also take much longer. Accordingly, you should always try to set the maximum time window as is possible in Facebook and Instagram or Meta. What you have probably already noticed when you have set everything up later, that Facebook numbers are often extremely high, especially for advertisers with extremely large budgets. This is simply because, firstly, Facebook only pays attention to the numbers that are within Facebook. This means, for example, if the person clicks on a Facebook ad and then e.g. the last contact is Google, then Facebook would, the purchase, still assign to Facebook because Facebook does not see that your potential customer had contact with Google, for example, and Google would also attribute the sale to itself. Google knows, for example, not that Facebook, for example, had contact because all the platforms don't see that. I also have a solution for how to solve that. The second thing is the topic of estimation via Facebook. The problem with Facebook is that because of these tracking issues, they can no longer measure properly. The goal of Facebook is usually to show a nice ROAS, which is how the numbers are estimated. Facebook also calls this static modeling. This is also hidden in the small print. You can see it here, for example. If I then go to sales, for example, then it says here in the small print that it is modeled statically. It also says under the ROAS, for example, that it is modeled statically. And here too, for example, when I drive over, there is information saying that it is appreciated. The problem here is simply that these estimates are also arbitrary, which means that these sales can be incorrectly attributed. But then there is also the second case, especially with new advertising accounts where there is no data, for example. There is the problem that if you have, for example, 10 sales, that is in Shopify, for example, 10 sales are displayed or 10 contact entries are displayed on the website. So e.g. Facebook only shows 2 or 3 sales or entries because the other 10 entries, if for example come through such advertisements, Facebook usually cannot measure them because of all these tracking blocks. And another thing that I mentioned before is that, for example, if we look at the graphic, we can see all of these channels in between, for example. Also email. In between there can also be TikTok, Pinterest, Microsoft ads, etc. can all still be there. Because the problem is all these platforms who try to get as many sales as possible. The problem is that because all the campaigns are isolated from each other, if, for example, they try to attract as many sales as possible, that is the wrong approach because everything plays a role. You shouldn't look at it in isolation. It is not the case that, for example, this purchase came through Facebook, this one came through Google, this one came through Pinterest, but all the platforms have a small share of it. For example, if someone sees a Facebook ad or Instagram ad today, and then he sees another ad on Pinterest, for example, and later Googles something about the product again, and then this person sees, for example, if you have a Google advert, then you only get a portion of it. That is, for example, also a problem with all the platforms because they always look to see what the last click was within the platform. This does not mean what the last click was within the entire customer journey, but more importantly, what happened within the platforms. All of these problems that I have just mentioned can be easily solved with external tracking solutions, such as our own marketing software Adverfly. So tools like Adverfly can still measure the numbers correctly despite all the iOS blockades. And another advantage is simple, that all the platforms are linked together. This means that we are no longer looking at the individual platforms in isolation, but rather the entire platforms are linked together as just explained. And another important thing is that external tracking tools like Adverfly do not work with estimates. This simply means that the numbers here are based on real measurements in order to optimize the right campaigns. Because if, for example, if you work with estimates, such as what is now being done here in the Facebook Manager, the problem is that you are simply optimizing the wrong numbers. And Adverfly also offers features such as that you can also see all the channels here on the top right can also be linked to each other, such as the attribution settings between Instagram, Facebook, Google, TikTok, and co. I had mentioned that all the platforms use the last click attribution. This means that the last contact receives the advertisement. But what many people forget is that the first contact is also extremely important because especially when you are doing retargeting, re-engagement ads, the problem here is that so often these campaigns such as this one often live from the first contact, because with this we have aroused the interest of the customers and the person then bought through this ad, for example. And if we only optimize for the last click and spend the entire budget here then it can happen at some point that we, for example, take away the budget here because all the sales are allocated here. So that then, for example, the source collapses here because the budget has simply been taken away or no sales have been allocated there. And the problem is solved with our tool Adverfly, which will help you a lot in marketing because you can, for example, set the last click, you can set the first contact. Then there is also the linear variant. Linear simply means, for example, now had 4 contact points and the person bought something for $100, then these €100 are distributed evenly to the platform. This means that with 4 contact points, that would be, for example, $25 per platform for each contact point because everyone gets a certain share of it. And then there is also the U-shaped variant, for example. With the U-shaped variant, the first contact and the last contact are the 2 most important contact points because the first contact wakes you up, for example, the interest, and at the last contact, the person decides to buy now. Therefore, these are the 2 most important contact points. Here, the first and last contact point each get 40% and everything else in the middle gets the remaining 20%. This is the variant we have here with U-shape. These are, for example, advantages compared to the Facebook Manager where everything is viewed in isolation, optimized only for the last click and the estimated numbers. You just don't know whether the numbers have been correctly assigned to the campaigns. That's the big problem here. As you have seen, nowadays you have to be a marketer or as a media buyer, you want to know more and continue to educate yourself in order to be up to date and to be able to deliver strong performance. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. So please leave a like and a subscription so that you don't miss anything in the future and take a look around the channel for many more videos. Then I'd say we'll see you in the next video.